Right, let's go. Deep breath. Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from sortofinteresting.com and today you're joining me on board good old narrowboat Abel's Ark for the latest exciting instalment, maybe not exciting, but the latest instalment in my completely free audiobook about narrowboat life. It's called The Call of the Canal, and in this section we're going to be taking a look at the month or so immediately after I bought and moved on board narrowboat Abel's Ark, after 2 years of living on dry land, and what I was sort of getting up to when I was settling into life on a boat again, and being in the marina and figuring out what was going on, getting work done on board, and just generally settling back into a life on the canals. This was an interesting episode to put together, as I actually extended this section of talking about my time with the boat in the marina for that first month, so that this could be a nice sort of well-rounded episode. And then in the next episode, we'll be going back out onto the canal to really enjoy some proper amazing, literally some record-breaking, beautiful summertime out and about on the canal. Anyway, as always, I suppose I should mention and do some plugs and try and make this pay for itself soon or somehow. So anyway, if you're curious or want to support the channel and what have you, please consider checking out my short boat life books available for the Kindle. There's also a paperback collection of some of the shorter Kindle books together. For the month of March 2019, most of my books on the UK Amazon store at least are going to be 99p. That's pretty much all of them, apart from the collection of books that I just mentioned. So please do consider checking those out. And I set up a Patreon specifically to basically try and recoup the money that I am losing by releasing this as a completely free audiobook. At some point, people have asked me to get this book, The Call of the Canal, onto the Kindle, so I'm figuring out the best way that I can do that and get as many of you as I can to be able to download it for free. So I think sometime during March, the final book will be put onto the Kindle, and for the first few days it'll be completely free to download for your Kindle and what have you. So I'll make sure that you get plenty of notice for when that happens, but if you'd like to support it, please do consider checking out the Patreon. All obviously totally optional. If you support or not, I hope you enjoy the book. Anyway, loads of links in the description. Feel free to add me on Facebook and all that sort of stuff. And well, until the next time, my friends, as always, keep it interesting, keep it boat worthy, have a fantastic day. I've got a cold while I'm recording this 2-camera piece. Hopefully that's all sorted by the time I'm recording this audiobook section. And anyway, the most important thing is, have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you back here very soon. Farewell. Oh, well, that was terrible. The Call of the Canal by Daniel Mark Brown. Part 3. Chapter 7. Marina Moments. After spending my first 2 nights on board Abel's Ark, moored at one of my favourite canal locations, I knew that I needed to get the boat back into the marina so that it would be easier to get some odd jobs done on board with the ease of access and car parking, as well as welcoming an ever-expanding list of people who wanted to visit the new boat. The boat trip to the marina entrance was every bit as short and sweet as the trip out of the marina had been. I waited for my granddad to join me on board, and we set off towards Ellesmere Basin, which we passed through within a few minutes. We then turned right, passed beneath one bridge, and then arrived at the marina. Easy enough. So far. When I had steered the boat out of the marina onto the canal a couple of days earlier, it had been a nerve-wracking experience, steering a 45-foot-long boat around countless other very nice privately owned boats. The level of nervous tension that I felt on heading back into the marina was completely off the charts. Being a natural worrier at the best of times, the prospect of heading into the marina, with my ultimate destination being to moor up in a narrow jetty alongside an immaculately painted and polished boat, didn't fill me with joy, especially as I had still barely gained an hour of experience on the tiller of Abel's Ark. The extremely short distance from the marina entry to my mooring space will go down as one of the slowest and worst performed acts of boating that I have ever carried out. Passing in through the narrow marina entry, I only slightly scraped the side of the bank, then managed to manoeuvre around one row of boats without issue. When my mooring spot came into view, I've got to say that all power of reason and sense left me for the moment. In hindsight, the obvious solution, and the technique I would use in the future, would have been to simply continue to move the boat slowly closer and closer to my mooring, then push the tiller as far left as it would go, which would turn the boat to the right-hand side. If I had gone with this simple idea of just mooring the boat normally, my granddad would have been able to stand on the bow or the left-hand side of the boat to push us away from the immaculate boat next door. Instead, I regret to have to report that the following actually happened. I moved the boat over to a free section of wooden jetty that was at a right angle to my actual mooring place. Here, my granddad jumped off and walked around to the end of the jetty that I was actually trying to moor up alongside. This left a simple job for me to do on board, to push the front of the boat out so that it would drift into alignment with my mooring spot, at which point I could then use the throttle to push the boat forwards into place. My granddad would then be able to grab the bowline and keep us from scraping alongside our neighbour. Well, that's the short version of what happened. The full procedure took several attempts to carry out. It took a long enough amount of time to complete that one of the members of marina staff came out and sat on the bow of one of the nearby hire boats to watch the spectacle unfold and also offer some advice, which I didn't actually hear due to the mixture of the engine noise together with my own self-inflicted state of panic. The important thing to take away from this story, however, is that the boat did get moored up without touching another boat in the marina. I ask you to focus more on that than the manner or efficiency of the actual mooring process. At this point, overall, life was on the up. It was the start of summer, the weather was great, I had a new boat, I was filming video clips for YouTube like there was no tomorrow, and now the boat was in the marina, I could really get to work on all the little niggles that needed to be ironed out in my new home. The month of May seemed to pass by in one long blur of cycling, odd jobs, sunny days on a boat and running around to various family members' houses to look after pets as they went away on holiday. It was an absolutely great time, chaotic, but filled with the excitement and novelty of a new home. During my entire 4 years on board narrowboat Tilly, I had only spent around 2 months in a marina, so even just spending time surrounded by the marina environment was a novelty to me. I was amazed at just how many people came and went to the boats moored up around me, especially as so many people would use their boats as holiday homes and come to stay for just a few random nights. The fact that they were used as holiday boats wasn't the surprising thing. Life on the Llangollen Canal exposes you to some of the busiest stretches for holiday traffic in the entire canal network. The surprising element was that holidaymakers wouldn't necessarily take their boats out of the marina. It never occurred to me that people would simply come out and stay on their boat in its mooring, as if they were visiting their static caravan. I have to say that this idea really appealed to me. I had only ever thought of holiday boats as something you had a limited amount of time to travel a limited distance with before you had to turn around and take it back to where you started from. It was a great environment and I met a good number of people. Scarily, a significant portion of them had been expecting to see me after watching my endless stream of videos on YouTube. Anyway, back to my own boat. Once a few days had passed, I found that I had really started to settle into a nice routine of working on the boat for a while, often with my granddad's tireless help, as well as going for a walk around Ellesmere in one direction or another. then settling down in the evening before I inevitably found some other reason to go out again and take advantage of having a supermarket less than 10 minutes walk away. That level of convenience for shopping really was a novelty compared to my previous years of boat life experience. I ended up buying a lot of random odds and ends that I felt like a home should have, which during the following months would slowly be taken off the boat and given to anybody who might actually want them. For example, a senseless purchase of an upright cutlery holder, which only competed for use with my cutlery tray hidden away in a kitchen drawer. The devil was making work for my idle hands. Those idle hands would soon turn back towards model railways as I fetched the single engine and a few salvaged pieces of track from my previous layout I'd built on dry land to set up on the boat as a test for what would be possible in such a confined space. I won't bore you with model railway details, but suffice to say that there was something thoroughly enjoyable about playing with a railway on a boat roof, even if the experiment did prove that I would have to abandon the scale I had been working in and buy some even smaller models. The marina environment was surprisingly peaceful considering the amount of people coming and going and the fact that it was a working marina with a dry dock, painting shed and hire boat fleet. There would of course be some days where boats were being worked on and the horrendous sound of angle grinders on steel could be heard, but overall I was pleasantly surprised at how calm the place was in general. By the early evening it would often be almost silent, maybe even quieter than some places out on the canal, as you wouldn't have people boating past you at all hours while you were hidden away in the marina. The sight of the sun dipping below the horizon as the golden light beamed out across the incredible array of multicoloured boats almost felt peaceful, if it could be expressed and experienced as a feeling. There is an interesting side effect of the marina environment, which makes sense if you consider that a marina is like a man-made pond that just happens to have some boats floating around it. The open space of the marina has very little water flow compared to the slow but steady flow of the canal, and whereas there could be hundreds of boats a week churning up the muddy water outside, the marina is comparatively undisturbed by maybe a few boats a day and sometimes none at all. This creates something that acts as a miniature nature reserve. Fish can live undisturbed by dozens of boats a day and grow to huge sizes in a relatively protected environment. The schools of larger fish then attract herons, which is why I only describe the fish as relatively protected. Seeing the fish swim around at leisure or suddenly dart down away from the water's surface if something spooked them was a lovely part of the marina experience. Sometimes I would catch a glimpse of a heron slowly stalking down the jetties between boats, and I would almost hold my breath as I peered through my bedroom or kitchen windows, waiting to see if it would make a daring dive for its dinner. There was one particular wildlife encounter that really stole the show, however. During my first few weeks in and around the marina, I noticed a splashing sound as I would walk down the waterside path towards the jetty. I assumed it was simply a fish or maybe even a frog or toad that I was disturbing as I walked. This happened a good number of times until one day I realised what had been causing the splash all along. I couldn't believe my eyes. One day, as I was walking down to the jetty with a bag of shopping, I saw a strange flat stone on the sloped bank just above the waterline. For a moment it looked like a turtle. As I got closer to it, I realised it was a turtle, or at least one of those garden ornament turtles that somebody must have placed there as a joke. I took my bags of shopping down to my boat nearby and couldn't shake the thought that the only person in the marina that would do something as silly as put a fake turtle anywhere for a joke was probably myself. So after a moment on board, I went back to investigate. I could barely believe what I was seeing when right in front of me, a real-life turtle turned towards the water, took a few steps, and then disappeared beneath the surface. This started a long-running obsession with me walking very quietly and gently past that area in the hope of spotting the turtle, who did indeed make quite regular appearances throughout the summer. What I am trying to convey with these random little moments of those early weeks on board is the sense of excitement and the fact that I just couldn't seem to sit still. I felt like I constantly had to be doing something, between odd jobs on the boat, going to work, YouTube, writing, and a million and one hobbies. I really just started living with an energy and pace that I had not experienced for years, if ever. Also during May, I spent a lot of time house sitting for family as they were off making the most of the summertime and good weather. This would be a regular occurrence while I had the peace of mind of being able to leave my boat in the safety of a marina. This had long been a tradition when I lived on Narrowboat Hilly. Now, however, with a much bigger and more comfortable boat, I would sometimes bike back out to the boat just to spend a few hours in the daytime or an evening or even a night here or there too. I just couldn't resist getting back on board in a way that I had never felt with Tilly. I'd go as far as to say that at some points my land life holidays to somebody's house were a relief from the rough and ready life that I led on board Tilly. There was never any chance that I was going to live in a marina, but the realisation that I loved Abel's Ark and that it was far easier to live on than my previous boat only encouraged me to keep the boat out of the marina even more than I had imagined and intended, which we will talk about more later in this book. Apart from the enjoyable moments of the time that I spent in the marina, there were, as I mentioned, many practical elements to mooring there in this early stage of setting up boat life. Although it would be less than a month before I was back out cruising the canal again, I made the most of those first weeks afloat. Although it would make for some very boring reading if I were to describe the process of painting the walls of a boat, similar to painting the walls in a house but with fewer straight lines, I do need to briefly mention that there really were plenty of mundane hours literally watching paint dry. It was often such great sunny weather that it was so hot on the boat that the paint was drying almost as quickly as it could be put onto the walls. The heat of the sun not only warming the boat like a greenhouse, but also literally radiating through the boat walls from the steel outside, meant that we were literally painting onto walls that felt warm to the touch, even amidst the already high air temperature on board. Along with the painting, I also had irregular one-off jobs to do, such as setting up a simple mobile broadband internet solution or replacing the burnt-out inverter. Having left the flat behind and not being certain when I would be on board in the marina or not due to house sitting, I found myself browsing small gas ovens online and deciding that the best course of action would be to have it delivered to my mum's house, where I hoped there would be a good chance of somebody being at home to receive it. This highlighted one of the awkward things about not having a fixed place to have big deliveries sent to, as once I had paid for the new oven, over £400 for the smallest oven, grill and hob combo I have ever seen, I had no idea when it was due to arrive, if ever. One afternoon, as I was literally getting onto the bus from Ellesmere to Oswestry, I felt my phone ringing in my pocket. Whilst paying for a bus ticket, I had missed the call, but moments later I had a voicemail from a delivery driver saying he would be delivering a parcel very soon. Knowing I wouldn't make it back to town in time, I then had to phone my granddad to ask him to go to my mum's house to wait for the delivery. He didn't actually have a key available to him at the time, but intended to wait outside. When he arrived minutes later, the driver was already there. In a surprise to everybody, it was not simply a delivery on the back of a van, it was a lorry with its own forklift truck detachment. What seemed like a contender for the world's smallest oven actually arrived on a miniature wooden pallet and surrounded by enough packaging to conceal a fridge freezer. When I finally arrived at my mum's house to discover a pallet waiting for me on the driveway, I had a brief moment of my heart sinking as I thought it must be the wrong item. It just seemed impossible that the sheer size of the packaging could be concealing my humble oven. Luckily, after peeling back the layers, I was greeted by the sight of 2 hobs that would go on to boil many kettles over the following months. It would take another month before I managed to get the gas connected to the oven on board, and for that period I would make do with a single hob camping stove, which was certainly a flexible way to prepare food, or at least boil some water for noodles while sat next to a whistling kettle on the roof of a boat in the sun. It took me a while to fully comprehend that when I had moved on to Abel's Ark and then decided to use Ellesmere as a temporary base, that I had not only left my flat, but also left my hometown of Oswestry. However, Ellesmere was an excellent replacement for the town. It had enough variety in shops to cover most of my day-to-day needs, was surrounded by even more easily accessible countryside than Oswestry, and had the bonus novelty of having several large lakes in the surrounding area. The early morning commutes to work and late night trips back would be a reminder of how active my previous boat life on board Tilly had been. There were certainly times that I felt that I may have crammed my backpack full with just a little bit too much junk for the roughly 8-mile ride between Oswestry and Ellesmere, featuring one annoying, very large hill. Despite these small reminders that I had now put a fairly decent bike ride between myself and most of my friends and family, I didn't really feel any kind of isolation or awkwardness about travelling. When I had moved to a building very near to the centre of Oswestry from Tilly, I had been amazed at the convenience of having people, shops and entertainment on the doorstep, having lived in some of the most rural places for around 4 years prior, sometimes with no other human being or even building in sight. Part of the reason for my lack of a feeling of isolation or awkwardness was that there seemed to be a huge amount of interest from people I knew who wanted to come out and see the boat. In the first few weeks after purchase, there is a good chance that more people visited Abel's Ark than the entire number of visitors I had during the 4 years that I owned Tilly. This was in some part due to the huge personal change that I had gone through during my years on dry land. I feel as if I had matured about 10 years in the 2-year period. There were actually some moments where, if I'm honest, I just wanted to be left alone to enjoy some peace and quiet on board for a few days. However, if somebody was asking to come and visit the boat, with a promise that they would call at a chippy on the way to me, well, who was I to argue? As the weeks of May rolled on, I was increasingly excited to get back out onto the canal to spend a few nights moored up at different locations that I had spent time in previously. In preparation, I started to stockpile things like drinking water, as well as buying up random boating items like a surplus of rubber fenders, spare rope, and items for any engine maintenance, such as bottle after bottle after bottle of oil. One day, I did what at the time I declared was the best shopping trip ever. It was also the most underwhelming non-event of a trip, as it didn't even see me leave the marina. I simply walked down the jetty to the marina office, bought some more fenders for the side of the boat, and a couple of bags of coal, bundled them into a large garden centre heavy-duty style trolley, and then very carefully walked it back up the jetty to my boat. It was one of the shortest and simplest shopping trips that I had ever done, but it was the fact it was so average and mundane that somehow made it significant. Pushing bags of coal between dozens of boats to my own little home was now a normal part of my life again. I was truly a boater once more. Less than a month after entering the marina, on May the 29th, I would be back out onto the canal, revisiting some of my favourite moorings and truly feeling as if I was not simply a boater again, but that I had actually never been away from boat life in the first place.